Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Green Book Podcast. I'm Karen Lynch, your host, and I am happy to be here today talking to a delightful, female professional in the industry. I'm talking to Paula Guarín. She is the head of consumer insights and marketing analytics for the Latin American Caribbean region at Visa. Paula, I'm going to briefly introduce you before we begin, but first I want to say welcome to the Green Book Podcast.
Thank you, Karen. Super happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So for those of you who are going to get to know Paula with me today, she has experience on both the client and the agency side. She's held kind of county, regional, and global roles. She is a guest lecturer at the University of Miami. She's a faculty member at Visa University, which we may have to talk about Visa University because that just sounds like a very buttoned up kind of option that they have onboarding folks at Visa is what I imagine. But she's also teaching market research specifically to internal and external audiences. So enough from me, Paula. Why don't you expand upon how I just introduced you and, tell our audience a little bit more about you?
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. So yes, I'm Paula Guarín. I'm originally from Colombia, actually, but I'm based in Miami. And I lead the Consumer Insights and Analytics team for Visa for the Latin American and Caribbean region, we call LAC. And I'm fortunate to lead a great group of professionals. I have the insight leader located actually in the countries, in our main countries, because we want to be closer to our consumers and to our clients. And when I say clients for Visa, it includes financial institutions, like banks, like neobanks, like fintechs, as well as merchants. And I also lead the team of marketing data science and analysts who develop regional capabilities to help us measure all the marketing performance in the region. And for me, what I think is important, I have a very clear, simple vision for my team, and is to provide continuous, timely, and actionable consumer insights, analytics, and learning to the LAC organization to drive both business and brand results.
I love that you have a vision for your team. First of all, just to give me an idea, like how large is your team?
We are 13 in the region.
13. So even I call that out because to our listeners, even with a team of 13, it's so important to have that kind of a vision. So, hats off to you. It sounds like a big job. There, as you were talking, I was like, that seems like an enormous responsibility. And I'm curious about your journey, how you got there. What are some milestones along the way in your career that brought you to the level where you can take all that on confidently?
Yes, sure. Actually, my entire career in insights and analytics started with one phone call that I made. So back in college in Colombia, so we had to select our areas of interest for the internship. So my first choice was marketing and the second choice was logistics. So I started to hear that some friends got interviews at a small market research agency, but I was not invited to that interview. So I was like, And I got interviews for big companies, global banks, but not from this market research agency. So I picked up the phone and called and asked, I'm Paula Guarín. I want to confirm that you got my resume. A few days later, I got the interview, and suddenly I was decided between a big company, the internship in a big company in the country, and this internship in the market research agency that not even in my family they have heard about it. So, like for my father, he's a doctor, or my grandfather, that he was a lawyer, like the obvious path was the big company, right? The prestigious big name. But I followed my gut and I went to the market research agency. And I think this decision, set the stage for everything that followed in my career. I stayed there for 2 years. For those of us who have worked in market research agency, we know that is the best learning experiences because you do everything by yourself. Then I moved to the client side in Colombia, to a British company. So great structure, a great learning experience in another way from the client side, more on the action and the strategy. And then another twist, I moved to Miami. I was very young, so I could also start in a new path, but I was super determined that I wanted to continue in market research. So I started a hiring process with a market research agency. That process actually fell through, but they asked me if they could refer me to a client that was looking for someone. Of course, I said yeah, yes, and that client was Visa. So
Nice.
this was more than 20 years ago. I started at Visa as an analyst, actually managing the brand and advertising tracking for 12 countries in the region. And well, the rest is, I think, is history. I've grown so much. Many years of my early career was a one-woman show for research in Latin America, and now I'm super proud to say that I build the team, that I lead the team, and that we do many studies, projects, and strategies for the region.
I love that story for so many reasons. First of all, I think that we have written about this on the Green Book website also about starting as a research analyst is actually, a great kind of step in your career because you are really focused on just the analysis. Everything else starts to come in after that. So it's a great way to begin a career, certainly at an organization like yours. But what a lesson in picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, did you get my resume?" That is actually an amazing lesson to not just accept that maybe you're not getting a position. There could be a million reasons why you didn't get, the application back. Maybe it was set aside. Maybe somebody was busy when they first picked it up, never came back to it, forgot, overlooked for the wrong reason. But the gumption that you show when you pick up the phone and call them. So good for you. That was a great move. Good move.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So let's talk about the structure then in place there, because you're talking about both the insights and marketing analytics. So kind of talk a little bit about that team that you have in place and how you're organized there. Like do different people have very unique roles? Is it kind of a team handling insights, a team handling analytics? Like how are you set up?
Yes. So the structure actually, I have it like in three main areas. So I have the insights team, more related more of the market research, consumer insights. This is the team that is located actually in the countries, very close to the consumer, having, the finger in the pulse of the consumer and close to our clients. And I'll tell you why it's important to be also close to our clients. The second group that I have is the analytics team, marketing analytics. They develop more regional capabilities and more meta-analysis. And I have then also a regional group of marketing data science team, which help us with all the transactional data. And why? Because at Visa, we have the fortune of having a lot of primary and secondary, information from research from consumers, but we also have a lot of transactional data.
Of course.
So imagine the depth of the analysis that we can do when we combine both. So that's the magic and that's the beauty of this team, because we can blend consumer insight with actual spending behavior. So having said that, with that combination, we, that's how the team is organized. But in terms of our priorities, I'll mention like we have 6 main areas of priority. So the first one is like the strategic research that we do. That is research that is available for all the company. That also is like thought leadership for us with clients. Say this is what we publish about Gen Z, maybe about the small business, about the affluent consumer, about travel trends. So it helps us identify opportunities for all of us in the company. The second area will be more the ad hoc or agile, more for rapid decision making for the marketing team to decide if they launch or they don't launch the campaign, the pre-testing, the concept testing, the disaster checks side. The third one, it will be the measurement and the tracking. Here is when we combine both the transactional and the research side to measure our marketing effectiveness, both in the brand and in the business. The fourth will be all the descriptive analytics that we can do with the data. Let's say for gamers, how gamers behave in their spending compared to others. The fifth one will be what we call the say-do correlation. because since we have with surveys where consumers say, we can see with the spending what they do, and we do these correlations, and to our surprise, it is pretty related. Even when they say that they intend to use a brand and we follow them, it is very, very related. And the sixth one that I think is very unique is that we also generate revenue selling research to our clients. So we
Okay.
also provide that service and generate revenue for the team.
There's so many things I want to go back to. Let's hover on that last point a minute because we talk frequently in some of our other channels about, for instance, like Walmart Data Ventures, how they conduct research on their retail data, right? And some of their customers, who are customers of the Walmart retail environment, are actually able to get intelligence from the Walmart customer data. So when you say you do research for some of your customers as well, it's all in the data you're investigating. It's pretty interesting that I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Yes, definitely. And we do also ad hoc studies for them.
Hmm.
We
Very cool.
leverage all the capabilities that we have to
Yeah.
and expand it to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So you're executing research not just for yourselves, but also for others. So
Yeah.
pretty sweet.
It's-
I want to hover also on that kind of the fifth thing on your list, which has to do with that say do gap that so many people talk about. Have you hypothesized why it's correlated actually and not as big of a gap as you might have thought? Because I would think in finance there is a big say do gap. I mean, that would just be my assumption as a consumer. But you're not finding that case. So talk to me a little bit about that. That's very interesting to me.
I think it's also fine tuning the way we ask the questions.
Hmm.
So when we are very, I don't know, specific, for example, I'm talking about a intention to use or to purchase something. If you give the person options like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's very easy for them to think about it. But if we give them options in ranges or very large, is more difficult. So we have seen that the more specific we give the answer choices in the survey, the more we can really relate to the data. So I think is how we answer the questions. Also, I think starting to use those techniques more related with timing, so consumers don't really rationalize a lot of things that in real
Yeah.
life they don't do.
Yeah.
So that helps us a lot also in the way of designing even the way that we do research.
Yeah, yeah. Well, kudos to you. I think that's great. A good testament for the quality of work that you're doing there. So let's talk about one other thing that you said again when you were going over the list about the members of your team kind of working locally. And you said we
Mhm.
can get back to that, but let's just go there. Tell me why that's so important. And I am assuming that means there might be somebody who's working from Brazil if you're studying the
Mhm.
Brazilian market, or somebody from Mexico if you're studying the Mexican market. Talk to me about that decision.
No, definitely, being closer to the consumer, to the market, even to the teams there that are really executing
Yeah.
is key. Even knowing, the agencies and the local vendors, I love, and we work with global agencies, but also with something local, depending on the project. And that local knowledge of the vendor, of the dynamics, of the market, of even the agility of the projects, it's everything is much faster having that person. But I think it's a
Mhm.
balance, right? Because sometimes we have just country projects, especially those that we do for clients. So we need the people there, but we need also somehow standard methodologies, so we are able to do benchmarks, to do comparisons, to tell Brazil or to tell Argentina, yes, you are on the right path or you can improve. So this is the beauty of also having like a regional team that helps
Yeah.
me standardize, so we can really conduct that. So I think it's a balance of both, being in
Yeah.
the market for agility, closer to the clients. If the client wants a presentation, it's not the same if you go there to the office, even even now that we have a lot of team meetings, but that especially in Latin America, that personal connection still is very valid. So for that side, but for the standardization, the capabilities, the models, the dashboard that we create, we don't need to do it for every market. We need a regional capability to do it.
I'm very curious as you're talking about that and thinking about the importance of it. I'm very curious about some of the unique challenges of having such a broad region.
Mhm.
I know that when I used to execute research before I joined Greenbook, and I was working in full service for with an insights provider, and we would talk about doing research, and we would in LATAM or in one of the LATAM countries, we were trying to figure out like which country is our client's target and how do we address translation needs. Like it was always very country specific. So when you're doing research in such a broad region, I am sure there are challenges um, that are very unique to, the LAC part of your role as opposed to somebody who's just, working here in the US, for example. Can you speak to any of those?
And I think you touch a great point because, even though we are a region, every country is very, very unique and different.
Yeah.
Even in our category where there is a lot of disruption now in payments, I can say that we have two extremes. We have countries like Brazil and Argentina in one extreme that are very mature in terms of digital disruption. And we have on the other side countries like Mexico or like Dominican Republic when disruption has not started. I don't want to say they are traditional markets because I think they are going to get into the disruption, but not yet. So to give you an example, we did a study about principality, about what is your main institution, your financial institution. So in Argentina and Brazil, the leaders are fintechs, while in Mexico and Dominican Republic, the leaders are traditional banks. In Brazil and
Yeah.
Argentina, consumers are aware of 22 financial institutions. They have five, they are clients of five. Can you imagine how you are fighting for that preference to be the main for that principality if the consumer already have five financial
Yeah.
institutions compared to Mexico or Dominican Republic, where they still have two. So
Yeah.
for now, it's easier. So that's the complexity of the region of really understanding the level of maturity of each country and the needs of each country, in addition to what we were discussing, right? The client needs, the consumer needs, the environment that definitely is different.
I love that. Thank you for that explanation. And whenever I talk to people like yourself, my head always starts to explain, and I keep thinking, um, we have an IIEX event for Latin America. It's our IIEX LATAM, and we underestimate the Caribbean part of it. I think where we roll of those all in, but I imagine that each nation in the Caribbean also brings a different dynamic because completely different from just completely different from the others when you talk about some of these more mainland
Completely
countries.
different behaviors, different values, different culture. So yes, our
Yeah,
even
yeah.
our marketing strategies have to be very, very different in those countries.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about what you do. So let's talk about some of the initiatives or projects you worked on. Nothing proprietary, as I reassured you. You don't have to divulge anything proprietary, but is there anything you share that you're particularly proud of that you've worked on?
Yes, actually, I'm always looking to do new things. You may ask, okay, you have been there at Visa for 20 years. How do you manage? So, uh, and for me, it's always like curiosity, trying to do new things every year. So back a few years ago, I put in place a consumer community, and when the pandemic hit, we already had it for a few years. And it was great because week by week, we were able to see what it was happening with the consumer in terms of at that time of what they were thinking, how they were behaving, how was this impacting even the spending behavior. So I'm super proud of having that in place at that moment because even at the all staff meetings, that the quarterly meetings that the president had, I had a section that was called 5 Trends in 5 Minutes. at
Cool.
these regional forums. So given the importance of knowing what was happening with the consumer. So that's one that I feel super proud of because it gave a lot of exposure to our area. The second one is kind of related because I do a lot of webinars and present as a speaker in many of our client events. And I love that because as important as it is to have the right methodology, the great results is how we communicate it and make an impact to the organization and to our clients, and also how we inspire them. And I am feeling that with every time that I go and present trends, we inspire people, we spark ideas. And I love that. I feel super proud every time that I go to a webinar or I'm a speaker at an event, or even we're talking about Visa University, when I do
Yeah.
teach a class, that inspiration and that spark of ideas of what I can do different. How can I solve this for the consumer, even if the team is in risk in operations, not necessarily in, of course, marketing and products is, our main internal client, but even in other areas that they can think, how can I make this experience seamless for the consumer is key. So that's something that I'm super proud every time I'm presenting these key insights to other areas.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, now very, very proud of being part of the AI transformation right now. How
Cool. Yeah.
we are leveraging AI to create agents that help us, communicate insights even to the broader organization. But at the same
Yeah.
time, how we don't lose that empathy and that humanity. We just
Yeah.
finished a big, big project about consumer immersions in 8 markets when even the leaders of the countries, like a group from different areas, we went to the houses of consumers, to the businesses of the small merchants. And I love that it was a life-changing experience for many, and I feel super proud of of leading this type of initiatives that in a world of AI and technology, we can still enable this human connection with our consumers.
Yeah. I'm going to pause there for a minute because I feel like if there are not opportunities for brand side researchers in particular, or even just brand side professionals across the board to get into people's homes, the homes of their customers or the businesses of their customers. The best work I did as a qualitative researcher was always ethnography and going into people's homes. And I just don't think you internalize who you're serving if you don't get out there and understand because they do not necessarily live like you do as a business professional. Like it's just not always the case. And I can't underestimate or undervalue what it means to go into people's homes. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Agree with you.
Yeah. Talk to me. I'm gonna go down two different paths. First, just talk to us a little bit. What is like really demystify Visa University because I think it sounds great. I love that there's an educational component to your work, and clearly you'd be a wonderful instructor. So I'm glad you're a part of it. What can you share about that?
Yeah, that's an internal like training initiative where they
Yeah,
have both classes or learning paths for employees, but
yeah,
also they do seminars, courses for clients.
yeah,
So the class that I have there is about market research. So I have
yeah,
done it for internal for other employees around the world, but
yeah.
also for some seminars for clients. And this is not necessarily about presenting consumer trends, but mostly about what is market research and how can we use the data to take a action, to make decisions, to improve our products. So
I
I
love that.
love it because it's another way to give of course more exposure to our area, to our job, more importance, but for people to really understand how to use it, right? How to use it to make decisions, to make their
Yeah,
day-to-day job better.
yeah. Very cool. Very cool. And also, I'm sure it helps some level. I'm making a an educated guess here, but helps kind of permeate the importance of the voice of the customer or customer data. throughout the organization if they understand from the beginning of their tenure at Visa, this is a part of what we do and it's this important, right?
Yes. In fact, let me add that another big component of this initiative is the onboarding of new employees. And I have that
Yeah.
session about our consumers for that onboarding because, as you said, that
Yeah.
it even sets the tone.
Sets the stage. Yeah. Very cool. I want to go with one other thing. So, you mentioned trend work and how fun it is to kind of have these, by the way, 5 trends in 5 minutes. I love that. I think it's fantastic. And I imagine it's exciting to bring. Trend work always fascinates our audience because we are the Green Book audience and the IIX audience. We tend to be very future focused and kind of what's coming. We want to be in the know. And we're always very curious about that. So, are there any sort of trends in your region that we should all be paying attention to if we have an interest in the LAC region in general? Anything you can share with us that, again, is not proprietary, but could be pointing us towards pay attention to this trend?
Well, I'll mention two trends. The first one is that, in Latin America, e-commerce continues growing at double digit in some countries.
Mm,
So that increase or surge of e-commerce continues, and we have to pay attention because it changes, the consumer purchasing journey. And for us at
yeah,
Visa, that's important because then what we are providing is, security and seamless experience. So it is easier for consumers to do it. And the
yeah,
second one that I will mention is definitely agentic AI. So,
yeah,
how artificial intelligence is going to help consumers make those purchases. And that's
yeah,
also a place that for our category is key
yeah.
to continue watching and see how develop. And I'll give you here one example from one of the consumer immersions that we did. This was in Mexico. It was among the lower socioeconomic level. This was a person that was afraid to use credit or debit cards at a merchant location, but
Okay.
she would be she would trust AI to do purchases for her. So this is shocking, This is then you see how AI is really changing or maybe shifting consumers' perceptions. So something new, this is a trend, so something new for us to track. This was just an observation on something that I experienced at that visit, but how it's going to evolve, right?
That is so interesting that AI could be more trusted for the purchase decision than going directly to the vendor. I wonder if that just has everything to do with the security that they assume AI has in place or the platforms that are using AI have in place. That's very interesting. So,
We're
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, this was, just an observation from one visit, but we are doing like a tracking study for AI to really understand that on a quantitative basis.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So, I do want to talk about kind of a passion of yours within your passionate work, and that's with high net worth travelers, right? So we just talked about kind of lower income, perhaps individuals, but let's talk about these high net worth travelers or individuals who happen to. I think I was reading an article that you wrote about. They may have multiple homes, so they're just going from home to home in different countries. We're talking luxury and obviously, you're studying those individuals. Talk to me about how did you kind of develop an interest in that because of your work? You kind of had to pay attention to them, or did you kind of gravitate towards that as I really want to study this more? Which was it?
Well, the reality is that we do studies about all our segments. We're talking about the underserved of the lower socioeconomic level. We do a
Yeah,
lot about Gen Z. We do a lot
yeah,
about the small business, the long tail, those entrepreneurs, or we call it even nano merchants, the small mom and pops in Latin America. And this is another segment of interest, but to tell you the truth, all of them are very interesting.
I bet.
So
Yeah,
in this case, I published that blog about the ultra high net worth of the affluent, but I have published other information about the rest. It's I think that's the beauty also of this job, that it's so dynamic and we talk about so many different segments and countries that is very, very interesting. But specifically about this one that I published about the ultra high net worth, what is really interesting is that it's helping us changing the stereotypes. Why?
Mhm.
We saw that it has like three multiple phases. It's like three groups within the segment. We have the traditional affluent in Latin America. Those are like families that are the owners of big businesses, and also with their children, they pass it that well generation to generation. But we have a lot of new affluence that it is not only like the soccer players, but also the influencers, the YouTubers, the creators, and they behave very, very different. The
Yeah.
traditionals are more classic, more reserved. The new affluents, they like to show more trends and show more of their status. And we
Yeah.
even have a third segment that is like the emerging affluent, that is people like is getting into the segment, like young professionals that have been escalated the corporate ladder and are now at that level, but still they don't behave as the other groups. So
Yeah.
depending on who are you talking to, the design of the communication, the events, the products could be different.
Yeah.
And also, what I think is super important is that this segment is in a moment of transformation. And this is what it caught me that super, super interesting. And that transformation is driven by four factors. So the first one is the big generational transfer of wealth. So
Mm.
it's not a secret that, baby boomers are transferring that wealth to millennials and to Gen Z. I think by 2030, it is expected that millennials account for 55% of the luxury market. And Gen Z is going to be between 25 and 30%.
Yeah.
So that, and we all have heard all those trends about Gen Z and millennials with, they value more experiences than products. They have more value related to social responsibility, to the environment. So of course, that generation is bringing all those values with them, even
Mm.
for the affluent segment.
Mm-hmm.
The second one that is super interesting is the increasing representation of women. Before, we used to think of the affluent segment and as a male executive, and now we have a lot of women in the segment, not only by inheritance but also because they are influencer creators, businesswomen. So
Yeah.
that is also a shift. The third one is the rise of the emerging markets. So also before at a global level, it was like it was Paris, Tokyo, New York, London, like the big luxury markets. But now 3 out of the 10 biggest cities increasing in this market are in India. And also, cities like Oslo, like Prague start to emerge, similar
Mm-hmm.
to and even the younger populations in the world, they are in Latin America, in Asia Pacific, in Central Europe and Middle East. So of course this changes. And the fourth one that you mentioned, and I think that's the most important even for our category, is the global reality. And that
Mm.
global reality means that they live in more than one country.
Yeah.
And I actually participated in one of those interviews with one person, one consumer in Mexico, but he had an apartment in Miami, a house in Houston, an apartment in Madrid. So there is a lot of opportunities for us in the category to provide multi-currency products to connect those accounts, those
Yeah.
financials for those people, because it's not only traveling as a typical tourists that they do, and they have the higher incidence for travel, but
Yeah.
also in the way they are living and spending time abroad.
Yeah. If we had more hours together, I would want to say let's talk more about the women because I am very again, those who know me have been listening for a while. I've traveled to Brazil for the first time. I now have a daughter-in-law who is from Sao Paulo, and and I have learned so much about kind of the matriarchal society, where the women in the households are making so many decisions and really are revered and kind of held to a higher esteem. I don't want to say they're pedestaled, but they have the utmost importance in the home. And I'm very curious about that. All of a sudden, I would want to take a little sidebar with you and say, tell me how that wealth for females is playing out in such a matriarchal society. I'd love to know more.
We,
Anyway,
we can have a separate discussion about that.
a separate
Definitely, when we
discussion
have
about
more
that.
time. Yeah.
I know, more time for sure, for sure. We are coming up on time too. So, anything in some of your learnings that you think would be helpful for sort of a greater audience? Like, is there anything that kind of high net wealth or affluent in any of those categories could be applied maybe to a different category outside of these luxury focused learnings cascading into other consumer trends, for example?
Yes, one of those trends from that study talk about the seamless experience that they want. The affluent segment wants a top service, but sometimes
Yeah,
we focus a lot of new experiences and forget about the basic, the user experience. And I think that applies to all the categories, all the segments. That's what we really should focus on how can we make that better for the consumer, easier for
yeah.
the consumer, faster for the consumer. So I think that's one that applies across demographics and across categories.
It's true, right? In everything that we do as consumers, whether it's shopping or whether it's a service, getting your hair done or getting your car repaired, we would like seamlessness, wouldn't we? The world is too complicated right now. We need our interactions with businesses to be seamless. So
Eh,
that
es-
resonates deeply.
Especially because the technology brands and companies, they taught us as consumers that things can be done with one click, that things can be solved with one chat. So
Yeah.
now consumers expect that
Yeah.
from every category.
Yeah.
Before when we do with this research, we did it by industry, right? Like consumer goods, financial. Now consumers, there is this thing called category liquidity. Well, they bring expectations from one category to another, right? So this is why this is now
Yeah.
across.
So helpful to think about. Gosh, Paula, thank you so much. Like literally this has been a course for our audience in things to learn. I'm sure there are people who are like, I'm going to be taking some notes during this episode. So I want to wrap with a question we typically ask, which is, the Green Book tagline, which is the future of insights. In your opinion, what do you think the future of insights is?
I believe the future insights actually is very, very exciting right now, leveraging all these AI tools that we have now in our favor. So how can we have more agility, reduce our speed to insights with AI? So the first thing is super exciting. Let's embrace AI in our favor, to be more agile, to reduce that speed to insights. But in terms of like the professional, and I think is the present and the future, is like in addition to all our analytical mind that I think is the core of our function,
Yeah,
I think this communication part is key
yeah,
because definitely, and now with all these tools, the podcasts, the webinars,
yeah,
even the agents in AI that we can create, we can even impact and inspire more people inside and outside our organizations. So, how
mm,
can we use all these tools, this platform, to make our insights more impactful with great communication? And actually, that's what I look in my team, a great analytical minds with good communication, because we are selling
yeah,
ideas. We are also selling in our companies. We are helping
yeah,
sales, not only the direct revenue that I was talking about, but how with these trends or insights, we are
yeah.
helping other teams sell other products or initiatives.
Yeah. And I love the call out that strong analytical skills are key. I was just doing another podcast that launched last week with Matt O'Mara, who's in executive search in the industry. And one of the things he brought up was strong analytical skills, basically, the ability to look at the data and apply that eye. So tapping back to 20 years ago, your skills as an analyst, right, are still serving you well today with those that analytical lens to what you're looking at. So, well, thank you so much. Is there anything I didn't get to today that you really wish I'd asked before we wrap?
Well, I won't say that how do we measure impact for insights and analytics, and my answer will be two things. Definitely the how we impact a strategy, right? What
Mm.
decisions are taken with insights. That's one. But the second one for us is definitely easier because we have a tangible revenue. So the ROI is easier to measure. So that's the two ways where we measure how we measure impact for my team in insights and analytics.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's it also critical. We are driving decisions, aren't we? So all the time in the insights, that is the reason that we exist, is to help inform those decisions that are being made within our organization. So thank you so much for sharing that. It was such a pleasure. And to our listeners, this was officially Paula's first podcast. So I'm so glad. Hopefully you will always remember it. But you were able to shine. You're a star.
Thank you so much. I always try to do new things in my personal life, in my job. I'm always looking for new methodologies, new ideas. So part of trying new things is why I accepted this invitation. Of course, super excited, but you say, let's do it. So thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for joining us. It was such a pleasure, Paula, really, for real.
Thank you, Karen.
You're very welcome. To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you, and do what we do to hopefully bring you the inspiration you need to further evolve your own careers and position yourselves in your organizations as well with new knowledge. Thank you to the Green Book team for helping us produce this, and to Big Bad Audio. Thank you for all of you do as well when you edit it up and clean us up. We are so grateful for everything that helps this show come about. And yeah, we'll see you next time on the Green Book Podcast. That's it for now. Bye, everyone.